All right, everyone, we are live.
Okay, thank you, Dallas. We'll go ahead and call the February 3rd, 2022 meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission to order. Maria, could you call the roll for us, please?
Yes. Chairman Lane,
Present.
Commissioner Hardees,
Present.
Commissioner Gayu,
Present.
Commissioner Norton, Commissioner Norton.
Present. Can you guys hear me? Okay, sorry.
Yes, yeah. Commissioner Goon,
Here.
Commissioner Jacoby,
Present.
Commissioner Sibley.
Here.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay. All right, then our next order of business is approval of our December 2021 meeting minutes. Do any of the commissioners have any comments or questions on the minutes? And if not, we'd entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the minutes from December.
Thank you, Commissioner Norton. Do I have a second? Okay, so I have an approval from Commissioner Norton, seconded by Commissioner Jacoby. As I've been reminded, we're supposed to follow our bylaws, call votes by roll on these online meetings. So Maria, would you please call the roll for that vote?
Yes, Chairman Lane,
In favor?
Commissioner Hardees,
Yes.
Commissioner Gayu,
Yes.
Commissioner Norton,
Yes.
Commissioner Goon, Commissioner Jacoby,
Yes.
Commissioner Sibley.
Yes.
Okay. That is unanimous.
Great. All right. The meetings are approved unanimously. Thank you. Next item is report from the chair, and this is just my opportunity to let anyone know out there watching the live stream that there will be an opportunity for public comment in the public invited to be heard section of our meeting. If there's anyone out there who would like to speak to something that is not on the agenda, this screen will come up and we'll provide instructions for you to call in, dialing the number when that time comes. It does not appear that we have any other business that would have a public comment segment, so that would be the only time that we would do that during this particular meeting. All right, thank you. Right, then next we have communications from our HBC liaison, which again, for at least some time is Mr. Schumacher. Brian, do you have anything for us?
I think Glenn's going to jump in here with a few things first.
Great.
Chairman Lane and commissioners, thank you for joining us this evening. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not Brian Schumacher. I wish I could be, but I thought I'd take this opportunity just to give you a couple of updates. Number one is, yes, going forward, Brian Schumacher will probably be your primary point of contact. Perhaps you know him. He's got a lot of experience with this board, maybe not the same names and faces, but certainly has experience. But we also have a new planner who is Jennifer Hewitt Apperson, just started with us, came from Loveland, but also has a lot of experience in Florida and specifically in historic preservation. So there's going to be a transition here, but we're not going to, it's going to be over a few meetings. So I think we're in really good hands with Brian and Jennifer going forward. We've also got some vacancies in our legal department. So one of the things I know is near and dear to your heart is the amendments to the Land Development Code regarding historic preservation. We have contracted with outside counsel to help us do that. We haven't got their time frame yet, but we have committed to council that it is in the next quarter or the beginning of second quarter. So we should be having drafts to you here very quickly. One other thing I wanted to update you on is the city council has, they want to get more input from commissioners and board members on new appointees. So in the near future, we're going to present to you an idea that after council reviews it and says go forward, where each board commission appoints like a nominating committee, which will include 2 members and a staff member to do initial interviews with future board or commission members. And then the total commission or board would vote on recommendations that would get passed on to city council ultimately for adopt. But they really want to get your input on your peer members. So look for that in the coming meetings. Probably we'll have ask you to make those appointments in March at your
And
March
Glenn?
meeting.
Hey, Glenn.
Yes,
I
sir.
was just gonna mention, I think that's important for the HPC because of the certified local government requirements, that, a certain percentage of the commission members have certain qualifications. And so I think that'll be beneficial to have input from the commission regarding the potential appointments by city council for this commission.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and then finally, and I'll let them introduce themselves, but when we get to the point, we are underway with a sub-area plan for the sugar mill and steam area. I'm sure you're all familiar with the sugar mill, and our principal planner, Aaron Fosdick, is going to give you a quick presentation on that. We also have a consulting team that's helping us. And then we also have standing by our redevelopment manager, Tony Chacon, who can answer any questions. But I wanted to give you an update on those things, and I will turn it over to Brian if you have anything else.
Yeah, Glenn, I really don't have anything else other than, the Saving Places Conference, both in person and virtual sessions, start next week on Monday and Tuesday are the in-person sessions. And then the virtual sessions are on Wednesday. I know a couple of the commission members are planning to attend. They didn't have a specific cutoff point for registrations. So if any of the remaining commissioners who haven't already registered have any interest in participating in the Saving Places Conference, please let me know before, probably by the end of the week if you're at all interested. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you, Glenn and Brian. Welcome back, Brian, and welcome for the first time, Jennifer. Appreciate you. Be good to get to know you. Any commissioners have questions for staff? No? Commissioner Norton.
I have more of a comment than a question. Just following up with what Brian was saying, I do believe that attending the Saving Places Conference allows us to meet our training requirements as a CLG. I don't know where we stand on that or if we need to think about it as a commission, but any of us who attends that helps.
Good point. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Any other questions, comments? No? Okay, great. We'll move on. Next is public invited to be heard. So this is the point in the meeting. If there's anyone out there watching the live stream that would like to call in and comment on something that is not on the agenda, this is your opportunity. Please dial the toll-free number noted on the screen, enter the meeting ID. You'll be called upon when it is your turn. Please do remember to mute the live stream so that we don't get a nasty echo. So we'll pause here for 5 minutes and wait to see if anyone shows up in the queue, and we'll resume then. Thanks. Commissioners can mute and turn off your screen during that period of time.
Chair and Commission, we are about 10 seconds out from the 5-minute mark. If you'd like to come back on camera, I can take down the the PowerPoint. At the 5-minute mark, I'm not seeing anybody in the chat right now. No one's calling in.
Hey, Dallas.
Yeah.
So I sent you and Jane an email. Looked like Sharon OLeary contacted me. She was trying to get in, but she was having issues with the caller or the meeting ID number.
Interesting. I will confirm, but I believe it should be. No, the meeting ID number is correct as it is on screen right now.
Okay.
If she's looking at a different site, potentially PrimeGov or something, that meeting ID number would be incorrect, but the one that is on screen right now is right.
Okay.
Do we need to be concerned that maybe in the switch over, the link from the city's website wouldn't have?
The link would still take them to the YouTube page. So anybody, okay, we do have a caller though. So I am seeing that they got in just a little bit late. So I'll admit them.
Thank you.
Yeah. And with that, I'm going to lock the meeting and caller 414, caller with the last 3 digits, 414. If you could hit *6, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, and when you do that, welcome to our meeting. If you would please begin with your name and address for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes for comments. Thank you.
Sharon OLeary, 534 Emory Street. Tonight, I want to talk to you about your role as a Historic Preservation Commission. As outlined on the website, HPC's role is to protect, enhance, and preserve properties of historic, geographic, or architectural significance and reflects the element of your city's heritage. In that description of HPC, it also clearly states that you can provide input on other topics of interest. In 2020, with the possibility of meeting 12 times, you met 7. But with COVID, that is so understandable. But in 2021, again, you only met 7 out of 12 times. And it was the 150th birthday, and what a poor way to celebrate. On January 6th of this year, I went to log in, and you didn't hold the first meeting of the year. I beg you, please, take your job seriously. The historic Eastside neighborhood is Longmont's oldest neighborhood. It's made with the oldest materials, and majority of homes were built as single-story homes and cannot stand the rigors of second story. So if a homeowner wanted to add a second story, the home can be demolished in order to create a new home with a better foundation to add a second floor. This is the perfect example of something. If you want to see a perfect example, drive by 830 Emory Street, the one that presently is a large empty pit, and soon it will be, or probably not soon, a 2-story home. I think the purpose historic Eastside neighborhood is a historic district, and that's to protect, maintain, and preserve the scale and basic salient architectural details of homes within that district. And this is something that you truly have to address. You need to address the demolition code and apply codes and standards that are unique to this historic district. The homes are not the majority of homes. The majority of homes are not able to hold a second story. So the only alternative that you leave people with, and I'm sure they love the idea, is demolish it and put in a new home. In 2015 in Denver, 200 homes were demolished. Most of them were brick bungalows from the 20s and 30s, and they were demolished and replaced with stucco-clad homes 3 times the size of the original home. Let's learn from history. Let's do better. Let's walk the walk. I think that starts with meeting regularly, setting priorities, and coming up with suggestions that you can give to the planning department and city council. Historical neighborhoods are lost one home at a time. This is a 911 HPC. Housing is a commodity. Planning department is overworked and understaffed. And once a home is demolished, oops, a mistake was made. There's nothing you can do. The home is done. So let's really be a historic preservation commission and work towards preserving Longmont's heritage of its oldest homes, oldest neighborhood, made with the oldest materials, and that's part of the problem. So I'd like to see you look at addressing new standards and codes for our historic district within our neighborhood, and a ripple effect for the rest of
I do need you
Longmont.
to wrap up this. I've let you go a little longer than the 3, so if you could conclude that.
Okay, well, I just appreciate it. And Brian Schumacher, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for the job you do. I greatly appreciate you, all of you.
All right. Thank you for your comments and taking the time to call in. We do appreciate that. Okay, that was our only caller, is that correct?
That's correct. No other callers.
Okay, thanks. We'll go ahead and close the public invited to be heard portion of our meeting and move on to the next item, which is annual business. And during that, we need to accomplish a number of things, including electing a chair and vice chair, approve our meeting dates and times, location, posting, and bylaws. And because we have to go through this as a roll call, I'd like to combine a couple of these things together just for expediency. So I think we'll start with the election of chair and vice chair, combine those two, and we'll open the floor to nominations.
Can we keep the chairperson and vice chairperson we already have? Is there any reason that we can't re-elect Chairman Lane and Vice Chairman Gao?
Only if I sneak out of the room right now.
No reason you can't, certainly.
Then I make that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to retain Chairman Lane and Vice Chairman Gayu, moved by Commissioner Norton and seconded by Commissioner Goon. Maria, would you please call the roll in favor?
Okay. Chairman Lane,
I will agree. Thank you.
Commissioner Hardees,
Yes.
Commissioner Gayu,
Sure.
Commissioner Norton,
Yes, and apologies to Gita. I'm sorry I mispronounced your last name. I'm tired.
Commissioner Goon,
Yes.
Commissioner Jacoby,
Yes.
Commissioner Sibley.
Yes.
Okay, Chairman Lane, it is unanimous that you are the chairman for 2022 for the Historic Preservation Commission. And Vice Chairperson Gayu, it's unanimous that you are the vice chair for the 2022 year for Historic Preservation Commission. Congratulations.
Thank you. All right. Then we have next order would be meeting dates, time, and location. I don't know if anyone has had a chance to take a look at the staff report. Brian outlined the dates that we had. Of course, they're generally the first Thursday of every month. The only one that I thought might be an issue was September 1st, because that is actually Labor Day weekend. And so I would probably suggest that we move that to the following Thursday on the 8th. Time at 5 o'clock is typical. And our location is, I think we can continue as long as everyone is okay with the Zoom call, notwithstanding today's little blip, until such a time as this pandemic scare has eased over. So any other thoughts or comments on time, schedule, and location? No? All right, I'll just go ahead and move that we, the dates as presented in the staff report, with the exception of September 1st, changing to September 8th. The time remain 5:00 p.m. and our location remain online until, as a commission, we decide that in person is appropriate.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion by the chair, seconded by Commissioner Sibley. Maria, if you could call that roll again, please.
Chairman Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Hardee's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gayu,
Yes.
Commissioner Norton,
Yes.
Commissioner Goon,
Yes.
Commissioner Jacoby,
Yes.
Commissioner Sibley.
Yes.
Okay, and those pass unanimously.
All right, great. Excellent. Thank you, Maria. Then the last two are meeting agenda posting location, which I assume at this point is essentially online, right? We don't have a physical posting location to approve.
Yeah, the standard is our web page, and then we have a backup Civic Center for posting.
Great, thanks. So online posting, and then our bylaws, which were included in the staff report. So do any of the commissioners have any comments or question on bylaws? Can I get a motion for agenda posting location and bylaws, please?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Great. So I have a motion to approve the posting location and the bylaws, moved by Commissioner Sibley, seconded by Commissioner Norton. Maria.
Chairman Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Hardee's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gayu,
Yes.
Commissioner Norton,
Yes.
Commissioner Goon,
Yes.
Commissioner Jacoby,
Yes.
Commissioner Sibley.
Yes.
Okay, that passes unanimously.
Great. Efficiency. Excellent. Thank you all.
Yep.
All right. We have no prior business to discuss on today's agenda. New business, we have the presentation by staff for our sugar mill and steam sub area plans. So it'll be pretty fun. So I'll turn it over to Erin. Is that going to be you to take us through this?
It is, Chairman Lane. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Dallas, if I could get you to pull up our PowerPoint, I would appreciate that. And while Dallas is doing that, I will mention, as Planning Director Van Nimwegen mentioned, I'm also joined by Glenn and Tony questions. We've been also looping Brian and Jennifer in. So if
Aaron?
Yes, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, it cut out and froze for a moment there. Not quite sure. It seems a little bit stuttery. Your voice, I mean, video and voice is fine. It's just chopping on us.
I noticed that.
Yeah, it happened again. Okay. If you can hear me, we can potentially try a different device or yeah, I'm not sure if you can't hear me because you look frozen on my end. All right, I'm going to reach out to Aaron here quickly.
I think Aaron's going to go into Tony's office and see if we can do the presentation from there, maybe.
Sure thing. I just messaged her, but
I'm in Glenn's office now.
okay.
Can you see me and hear me?
I can see and hear you.
Okay. Glenn is in here with me. So if you need to ask one of us a question, we'll be together. Sorry, I got a message that said Zoom stopped and then my screen turned green. So it's apparently one of those nights for us with Zoom.
Oh, no.
We'll go ahead and get started. So tonight we wanted to give you an update on the sugar mill and steam sub area planning that we've kicked off. And I think we've mentioned to the commission that we'd be doing this project. We are partnering with Stantec, which is a consulting firm They do a number of things, including planning, urban design, stormwater, transportation. So they're a full service firm, and we're really excited to be partnering with them. If you could go to the next slide. We're going to just give an overview tonight. We've been spending quite a bit of time over the past few months doing existing conditions gathering, taking a look at existing plans and reports that have been done. So we're going to give you a lot of basic information and then present a little bit of information on what we've heard from the community and hopefully get some questions and feedback from you. So as you know, we started this detailed sub-area plan for what we're calling the sugar mill and steam areas. It is important to note that this is about a 250-acre site, and we recognize that it's pretty diverse. So we've got the sugar mill area on the east. Martin sort of bisects the site, and then we have the steam area on the west. While this is one overall study area, we do recognize that there'll be multiple character areas within this site. So we just want to make sure that everyone understands we're not intending to come up with, one overall program that's going to fit for the whole entire site. But we are looking at it because there are some things that we do feel really should be looked at on a larger basis. Our focus is really on looking at the opportunities and challenges within the study area. We're going to be looking at urban design within these different character areas. We're going to be looking at connectivity both within the site and to the larger Longmont area and region. We're also going to be looking at what type of phasing in terms of public and private investment need to be made. There's a lot of development interest in various parts of this study area, and so it's important for us to understand what the infrastructure requirements are and how public and private investment might support some of the redevelopment efforts that we anticipate over the next several years. Next slide, Dallas. We've set up a number of high-level goals for this project, and at the end of the presentation, we can talk a little bit about some of the community feedback that we've gotten. But really, these goals are around housing. As you know, housing continues to be an incredibly important conversation in Longmont. And so we're really looking at how can we encourage a diversity of housing options, a lot of different types and price points, rental and ownership options. We're also looking at connectivity. As I mentioned, we'll be looking at both regional connections as well as connectivity within the site. As I mentioned, also, there's some considerable development interest in and around the study area, and I'll show you that in just a second. We want to make sure that there's connectivity, both in terms of transportation, but also just in terms of compatible development in the study area and between the broader Longmont area. We know that culture, arts, innovation continue to really be important, both within this area, but also in the broader community. And so how can this area sort of incentivize and encourage additional creativity, innovation, arts, and culture? And how can we really help to ensure that whatever we're doing is sort of complementing and not competing with what's already going on in areas like downtown and at the Quail campus with the museum? And then finally, we have a real focus on sustainability. We really want to make sure that these longer term efforts are focused on sustainable building and development practices. And we really think this site and this planning effort can help us sort of be a model for pioneering sustainable development. Next slide. It's important to note that we're not starting from scratch. There's been a number of plans, reports, and studies that have been done in these areas over time. And so it's important for me to just mention there's a lot of guidance. There's obviously the plans themselves, but there's also been a lot of community outreach and input. And so we're making sure that we honor that. And these are some of the high-level documents that we're looking at. Most recently, the city did an arts and event center feasibility study. We conducted an Urban Land Institute TAP in 2020. City Council led an effort to do some visioning in the STEAM area in 2019. As you know, we had a Main Street corridor plan that same year. The comprehensive plan was adopted in 2016 and provides some overall guidance. And then back in 2012, we did the first in Main revitalization plan that really laid the foundations for the transit-oriented development area that's just to the west of this and is also informing this effort. Next slide, please. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but just to delve into the most specific plans that we've taken a look at for these areas. We do have this ULI technical advisory panel report that was complete in 2020. And I think I provided a link to this in your communication. But this was really a group of development professionals that volunteered and over the course of 2 days came up with this report that really helped us think about the sugar mill area. So this was a smaller site, really focused on the sugar mill itself, and came up with recommendations in 5 areas. And you can see those are around site remediation and cleanup, master planning the site, which is what we're doing now, creating an agri-hub, developing that sustainable community, and also how would we finance some of what this is talking about. So you can see the key takeaway here, some of the key takeaways. I won't read through those, but I would encourage you. I know the sugar mill is probably one of the pieces of the study area that this commission is most interested in. And I think the TAP was also pretty interested in adaptive reuse and preservation potential for the sugar mill. So I would encourage you to take a look at this report if you haven't already. Next slide, please. In terms of the STEAM visioning, this was really an effort that was led by council and the city manager's office. Over the course of 3 separate meetings, an advisory panel got together and really envisioned what could be for an area sort of south of downtown, north of the river. They came up with some land use alternatives that really looked at some massing, some different types of uses, and they also came up with 7 narratives that really described this area in terms of transportation, building design, the types of businesses we might attract, overall land use, arts and culture, what the natural environment, how we needed to interact with the natural environment, and then obviously the education component. And so those narratives exist on our Engage Longmont site. We're mining that data to take a look and see what might be applicable as we move forward here. So another resource that we're really looking to. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, there has been some development interest in and around the study area, and it's important for us just to take a look at this map. This is our active project map. And as you can see, the study area is outlined in pink. There are some projects that are either under construction or already constructed, such as South Main Station. There's some others that are in earlier stages of the development process that will add some mixed use, some residential, particularly in the western portion of the study area. We've also met with a couple folks that are interested in doing multifamily and mixed use development in and around the sugar mill itself. And so we've had pre-application meetings, we've had one neighborhood meeting, and there continues to be a lot of interest. Good opportunity to mention that we are meeting with property owners, interested developers, and stakeholders in the study area. We've had a couple of meetings to really talk specifically about what people's visions are, what people's plans are, and we'll continue to do this. You can also see that there's some larger projects adjacent to this study area, which we feel are acting as catalysts to really create interest within the study area. Next slide, please. Don't need to spend a lot of time. The next few slides are maps, but just to sort of give you a sense of the context of the study area. This is sort of important because as you can see, there's a number of property owners. There's over 60 property owners within the study area. And so as I mentioned, we're really trying to engage them and see how can this study area help them as they think about the future for their properties. And we are engaging, especially with some of the larger property owners that have the potential for redeveloping their properties, including the sugar mill itself. Next slide, please. This is the zoning map. May not be as of interest to the Historic Preservation Commission, but as a planner, I had to throw this in here. I think one thing to note here that you probably already know, but the sugar mill itself and the property to the south where there's currently storage are not actually annexed to the city yet. And so that's something that would need to occur prior to any development, prior to any preservation through the city. So most of the rest of the study area is zoned either mixed use downtown or mixed use employment. There's a little bit that's zoned PUD and is also planned for some mining and reclamation just to the southwest of the sugar mill site. Next slide. Also an incredible opportunity with the open space system, particularly along the St. Vrain Creek. As you can see, this study area is bounded by open space and nature area. And so we're really looking at how can we connect, how can we build on that? And this is something that's come up in our community outreach in discussions with staff. There's a real opportunity to integrate this site to the already excellent system of trails and open space that exist primarily to the south, but as you can see, you'll see on the next set of maps, there's also some great trail connections that help get us to other parks and open spaces within the city. Next slide. The next set of maps will show a little bit more about connectivity, and I think what I'd like you to take away here is the western side of the site is a little bit more well connected. We've got some connectivity challenges, and you can see that here on the street map. There's not a lot of northwest connections, nor frankly are there a lot of east-west connections as you move east of Martin Street. And so that's something we're really going to need to take a look at. On the west side, however, there is good connectivity. We've actually added connectivity with the Boston Avenue connection, and that will be enhanced in the next several years. There's that great downtown grid that we can continue to build on and really create more of that urban streetscape. So we're trying to look at how we do that in the eastern portion of the site. And we've got some folks that are working on redevelopment options that are taking a look at that as well. Next slide. Similar story with pedestrian access. You can imagine that sidewalks and trails are much more prevalent in the STEAM area, sort of in the downtown area, lacking a little bit more in the Sugar Mill area. So something that we definitely need to think about. The other thing that I'll mention here is we've had some outreach from folks that are living in the Mill Village area, that there's a real opportunity to use this project to help them better connect back to the city. And so when we think about those connections within the site and to the rest of Longmont, both from a pedestrian and bicycle standpoint, that's going to be incredibly important. And I think these maps kind of illustrate why. Next slide, please. Bike infrastructure exists relatively well on the western side. Again, 3rd Avenue is sort of where that bike infrastructure stops. And so thinking about how we can create those connections, how we can get people down into the study area is something that we're taking a look at. Obviously, the railroad creates some additional challenges as we think about vehicles, bikes, pedestrians, and transit. But that's something we're taking a look at. Next slide. And then finally, with regard to transit, as you can see, the western side of the study area is pretty well served with transit, and that will increase even more as the First and Main transit station comes online. But we really need to think about how we can bring transit down into the study area, particularly as additional redevelopment happens. If there's additional employment uses, additional residential uses, we want to make sure that those folks have a multitude of options to travel. Next slide. So the next couple slides, just to talk a little bit about opportunities and challenges. As I mentioned, we are building on the prior work, and we think this is a real opportunity because a lot of the groundwork has been done. We've heard a lot from the community, and we have some great ideas to work with. Probably not a surprise to the commission, but one of the huge opportunities that we see is this is our Eastern Gateway. If you've been by the site, if you've driven into Longmont, walked into Longmont, biked into Longmont, this is really what you see. And so we see some incredible opportunities with visual entry. We see some incredible opportunities with preservation of the sugar mill. And as you know, I think we've talked about, the community really supports historic preservation and adaptive reuse of the sugar mill complex itself. Want to take an opportunity to mention that we did meet with History Colorado a couple weeks ago, and they're also really excited about the opportunities. There is a development group that's interested and has been working with the existing property owner. And that development group has some history with historic preservation, redevelopment, adaptive reuse. And so we're really excited about the possibilities. Also want to mention that in the recent survey we did, I'll share some information with you in just a second. We had an open-ended comment on, is there anything else you'd like to tell us? The most common comment we got related to preservation and adaptive reuse. And so I think it's a real opportunity, and looking forward to some of your comments on how you think we might be able to really embrace that. We're talking a lot about housing. As I mentioned, that's one of our overall goals. City Council and the community at large continue to talk about the need for housing and diverse housing options. And so we really see this study area being able to identify how we can appropriately include missing middle housing types, how we can include attainable and affordable housing. So that's a big opportunity that we see. I mentioned the open space connectivity. There's some greenway access potential to connect to the river, which really opens up all of Longmont. I also mentioned that there's going to be some mining and reclamation just to the south of the site. And so that'll provide some additional opportunities for future open space. And then in terms of best practices and pilot projects, we're really taking a look at 3rd Avenue and seeing how could 3rd Avenue possibly be re-envisioned to really not be such a barrier in terms of transportation, but really be more of a complete street. We're also looking at how can we look at site-wide drainage and stormwater needs to really look at green infrastructure, low impact design, and think about some of those regional solutions rather than a development by development potential. And so that's something we're pretty excited about. And then again, thinking about arts and culture and how can we build on the existing assets, not only in STEAM, but frankly, throughout the city. And so I think there's a lot of excitement from the public, from city staff, and frankly, from council in that regard. Next slide. Like with any opportunity, there comes challenges. And you can see what some of the bigger challenges that we've identified here. I've mentioned connectivity several times. There is some real challenges around access. There's a lack of signalization. There's some, safety issues, and some of that is a result of that signalization. Pace has always been identified as extending to connect through this site. But as we've really thought about that, there's some significant grade challenges. If you've been out to the sugar mill site, you understand what I'm talking about. And so we're really trying to re-envision how can we provide those connections in a different way. Some safety issues with, as I mentioned, some of the crossings. There have been some crash incidents, particularly along 119, 119th Street. And so taking a look at that. And then really just connecting these two areas, both to each other and obviously to the broader community. Railroads continue to be a challenge for us in this site. And we're really looking at what does it mean to relocate versus realign? How far can we push this before we trigger, gigantic reviews and having to close crossings? So we're taking a look at that. Although open space, we're proximate to open space, there are some challenges, primarily because of the railroad, in terms of accessing the river, accessing the St. Vrain Greenway. And then, as you can imagine, there are some environmental constraints that we're having to deal with. I do want to mention, and Tony can talk more about this if you have questions, but we have been working quite diligently on this, and phase 2 sampling is nearly complete. Tony's been working with our consultant team, and they have submitted a brownfields grant to really think about how we plan for the cleanup. The interested developer is very aware of some of these issues and has been also working closely with us on this. And then there's some floodplain issues. We continue to try to rebuild after our 2013 flood. The Resilient St. Vrain project continues on, but there are some significant floodplain issues that are not completely resolved, particularly in the STEAM area. And so we're continuing to work through those. Next slide, please. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but it is interesting. We did do a brief market study, particularly to look at residential, and we're taking a look to verify a recent market study that was done by the Downtown Development Authority and the Longmont Economic Development Partnership looking at non-residential uses. This won't be a shock to you, but like much of Colorado and the nation, we have some demographic shifts that are underway in Longmont in terms of getting older. Our households are getting older. Our number of non-traditional households, those without children, are increasing. And this is a driver of housing demand. And so it's really up to us to take a look at how these demographic shifts are changing our housing preference. And we think that's why there's such a role for missing middle and different types of housing in this area. We know that diversity is really going to lend itself well to helping us change with the times. We also know that growth is slowing, and I know when we say this, it seems crazy to some people because we still have a lot of development. We've seen a lot of growth, particularly in multifamily projects over the years, but there is forecasted reductions in growth rates, both at the state and national level. Net migration is down, birth rates are low, death rates are higher, and so all of this is contributing to slower growth rates, which obviously has an impact on the future redevelopment in this area. The pandemic continues to offer a lot of unknowns. It hasn't impacted every sector as much. Certainly, we've still continued to see industrial and multifamily development. Retail and office are going through a little bit of a reset, and we're not sure exactly what that means for built environment and development projects going forward. Just as we don't know what the work anywhere, live anywhere, we don't know necessarily if that's a trend that's here to stay. It seems like it is. And if so, communities like Longmont, you might have heard the rise of the mid-sized city. We are well positioned to capture some of that growth. We're a great community with a lot of amenities. And so if people don't need to live in a big city for their job, they can live anywhere. Longmont might be one of those places they want to live. And so this is all really driving what we think is the next phase in sort of our growth and development. Next slide, please. I'll kind of close with community and stakeholder outreach. Obviously, any good planning process is built on understanding what the community's desires and interests are. We really want to be inclusive in our approach. That being said, we also have a lot of great information that we can mine already. We've talked to the community a lot over the years, if you think back to the slide that I mentioned with previous plans. And so we're taking a look at what we've heard so far, but we're continuing to gather new information from community and stakeholder groups. And so we're doing that through surveys. We're doing that through Engage Longmont. Obviously, with the pandemic, we're a little more limited on what we can do in person, but we are planning an outreach with a set of third graders. We're going to be partnering with Growing Up Boulder, who's done some great work with youth engagement to hopefully get a fresh set of eyes on what adaptive reuse might look like at the sugar mill. And so hopefully we'll be able to share that information with you later this spring, but really just thinking about what the community wants. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we do have a presence on Engage Longmont. If you haven't been out there, I would encourage you to check that out. We also have a webpage where we'll be sharing information. So those are both good sources. You can obviously always email us as well. Next slide. And I'll just close with some of the feedback that we've gotten so far. We did do a recent survey on the project goals, and we asked people a few questions. We got over 250 responses from the community, and frankly got a lot of sort of the other. Is there anything else you want to tell us that we didn't ask you? And we got some really great creative information. We've really just started going through that survey because it only closed early this week. So you guys are really the first to hear about it. But what we heard in the realm of housing is that people do really support townhomes. There's also support for condominiums and apartments, and some support for senior housing and tiny homes as well. In terms of regional connections, I think people want to see shared mobility options. People want to see options for regional connectivity in terms of high occupancy vehicle lanes and BRT accommodations. So there's some interesting things that we'll be looking through there. People are really interested in continuing to support culture, creativity, and innovation. Kind of our top venue that got support was people really are interested in seeing a live music venue. People still have a lot of interest in performing arts and a number of other types of facilities. So we'll be taking a look at that. And then finally, with regard to sustainable development, you know, there's a lot of different ways that people anticipate this development can be sustainable. And that could be through land use, that could be through energy, that could be through a number of other mechanisms. So we're really taking a look at the feedback there. Next slide. And with that, I will close. I know that was a ton of information. Happy to answer any questions. As I mentioned, Glenn and Tony are here. Actually, Glenn's here literally right with me. So we are happy to answer any questions. I see Terry has her, Commissioner Goon has her hand up.
And I just need to apologize that I do need to leave. I know we struggled getting this meeting started, but I appreciate your presentation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and if you have other feedback, certainly feel free to email us. We'd love to answer any questions or provide any additional, if you have any input.
Can I ask where the survey went out to? Did you send that to people, or it was people found it on your site?
We tried to advertise it through city channels, so social media, our website. We advertised it through some newsletters and stuff. But if we do future surveys, we could email the commission directly if that's something that might not have happened. So okay. I apologize if we didn't do that.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Aaron. I appreciate it. That was a ton of great information. Other commissioners have any questions or comments you'd like to share?
I just wanted to say that unfortunately I also have to leave.
So same thing. If you have additional input, please contact us.
Sure. Thanks.
All right.
And Chairman Lane, I would just mention, we haven't officially talked about what our mechanism. We do anticipate that this is a plan we would take to council for formal acceptance. Because of the interest in the sugar mill from this commission, we may be actually coming back to you all with a final plan and seeking a formal recommendation. We haven't determined that specifically, but if that were to happen, I would anticipate that would be sometime later this spring.
Okay. One thing that occurred to me was just a question about how much, if anything beyond what was in the packet in terms of historic structure assessments have taken place. Like, what do we know about the condition of these buildings right now? And if it's not much, what would it take to get some of that moving? And I'll phrase that it's especially in light of a couple of projects that we've seen come through here when folks start to talk about, oh, well, the condition at this point is so bad that we have to just let it go. And, and I know that happened. It happened also to the Johnson's Corner station that's over in Prospect. Now that ended up being restored, but these things have a way of falling apart rapidly, and it'd be great to document conditions as sooner than later, right? So we have a sense of what can realistically be expected in 10 years or 5 years when something might come forward.
So I will say we don't have detailed structural assessments for all the buildings, but I know Tony's done quite a bit of work and might be able to offer a little bit more concrete feedback on that question.
I can bring you the most recent information is so that we do have a prospective developer. He's under contract on that property upon which the historic buildings are situated. And he did, as of earlier this week, indicate he intends to proceed with a structural assessment, a historical structural assessment. And he'll be reaching out to the state of Colorado, their historical fund, to see if they will assist in the funding of that study, to which I believe they will, because we met with them, a couple of weeks ago, Aaron, and they were very supportive of trying to bring whatever resources to the table they could. So I think you can be assured here within the next couple of months that that assessment will be underway.
Great, thank you. Other commissioners have any other questions or comments?
I see Commissioner Norton has her hand up.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I didn't see that.
So I'm interested in the potential of bringing the plan for the sugar mill before the commission. If that didn't happen, what does the city foresee as our role in this redevelopment?
So Commissioner Norton, I think there's a couple different things. Right now we're doing this sub-area plan. And so this is, it's not a site plan or a redevelopment plan in and of itself. I think similar to other sub-area plans, when we've come to you and asked for a recommendation and then taken that to city council, they accept the plan, and that really becomes a guide for us to use when development decisions are being made, right? And so I think that would be one role, is for you all to take a look at that plan and say, yes, we think this makes sense from a higher level vision standpoint of what the vision for this area could be. I think there's other decisions that may come to you that are more related to development, and Brian may want to weigh in here, or Tony. Certainly, through the development process, there's mechanisms for the HPC to be involved more directly in those various stages. With regard to the sugar mill itself, it's not annexed yet. It hasn't even been to council for an annexation referral. So that would really be the first step that would come before council. And I don't think we typically bring those to any of the other commissions, HPC or Planning Commission. But I'll let Tony and Brian jump in with what they kind of think the role might be.
Yeah, so I'll address it from the perspective of the developer and what has been expressed today. So this is going to be a rather substantial, costly endeavor to, first of all, remediate the property and then bring it up to structural capability, let's say. So with that, we're looking at every resource we possibly can, and there is high probability that he will be needing some kind of a designation from the Historic Commission here to be able to access those resources. And so, for example, one thing he will be looking to pursue are tax credits, historic tax credits. And so under that scenario, he has to get some level of designation on the property. So if this developer were to proceed, as he has indicated, and if he were to proceed at all, I'd say there's high probability it's going to come before the commission to get some kind of designation on either the area, the buildings, or whatever.
Yeah, and in addition to Tony's comments, as Aaron mentioned, this property is still in unincorporated Boulder County, and assuming council gives the green light through the annexation referral step, there'd still be the formal annexation review process, and that would be an opportunity for the HPC to weigh in on that. And I think as part of that process, we would ask the potential developer and applicant to provide an updated cultural resource survey on the property. I know there was some done several years ago as kind of a part of a Section 106 review through some CDOT work. But I think, as part of that annexation process, we'd ask for an updated resource survey to review with the commission, for the commission to provide a recommendation to Planning Commission and City Council as part of that annexation review process.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments? No? Well, I think it's obviously really exciting to see that's something rolling here. It's been, sitting out there for a really long time, and everybody wants to know what's going on. And again, I think it's just really, obviously this commission cares about making sure that these big pieces of our Longmont's history get the due treatment, that they're treated appropriately, and to see that it revitalized, would be really exciting. So I appreciate all that information, and we'll stand and anticipate some more as it comes through.
Thanks so much. Look forward to working with you guys.
Thank you.
Great.
I'd like to thank you all too. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time tonight and hanging around while we figured out what was going on. All right. Great. That was super informative. Appreciate that. So that's all we have for new business on the agenda this evening. So now we just have an opportunity for HPC commissioner comments, if there are any. Commissioner Jacoby.
Yeah, I'd like to just comment on Sharon OLeary's call in. The house she referred to, I think it's 830 Emory, maybe 820 Emory, was one of several that I mentioned, maybe a number of meetings ago, when I was concerned about the transformation of the historic East Side. There is a lot of development pressure currently in Longmont, it seems like, and there's several properties that have been transformed, perhaps inappropriately, I would say, and we can't change that now. And yet the historic area is very limited in quantity. And so I understand her concern and her urgency. At the time, I mentioned maybe bringing back some of the restrictions on development for the historic East Side neighborhood, at least, until we had some more comprehensive conservation overlay or historic protections for historic districts. I didn't pursue that because City Council at their next meeting unanimously approved making funding available for this year for going forward with making guidelines for our historic districts. And so that's supposed to take place sometime this year or start this year. And I'm wondering if anybody here, with Glenn here at the meeting and whatnot, do we have any timeline for when this is going to take place? Does anyone know?
Yes, Commissioner, I could speak to that. You're right. We did go to council with a number of actions, and we put in our budget some funding to create some design guidelines, not only for the east side, but the west side as well. We really need to get the base, the code, really redone first with reference to those design guidelines. So that's really number one. See, I think and again, I think we presented that as like sometime second quarter of this year, that we would have those hopefully in effect. And certainly the work you've done on the draft ordinance addresses some of the concerns with demolition. And we've had some conversations with our legal staff. And again, the person we have on contract, we think we're going to present something to you that's going to be very workable. So yeah, we just need to get there.
Yeah. Thank you, Glenn.
Sure.
Any other commissioner comments?
Looks like Commissioner Norton has a comment.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. I had a question for Glenn. Thank you, guys. The design guidelines that you all are hoping to contract out for, you said the west side as well. Are they only for designated historic neighborhoods? So I know, like my neighborhood is not designated historic. We're on the edge of the west side, but we're also seeing the same kind of development pressures, you know, of people scraping and putting up new houses or almost complete demolitions. And so, you know, to what level will the design guidelines, how many different neighborhoods will these really be addressing? And then I guess, are there plans to take a more comprehensive look at different neighborhoods in the city to kind of assess how historic they are and kind of build on what we already have with both our historic neighborhoods and design guidelines?
Yeah, what I put forward is specifically for those historic districts on the east and west side. There are other areas, and perhaps we can expand that rubber band a bit. The other thing we did have in there is basically bringing somebody forward to also help with doing additional surveys too. So we do have a little bit of money that maybe we can do some additional research on other properties that should be designated, or maybe it's increasing some of the districts.
I think that would be great. And if the city has money, and I know we've talked about this in the past because the Historic Preservation Commission might have a small bit set aside as well, we might be able to leverage that as matching funds for different types of grants with like the State Historical Fund or others. I'd be happy to talk with the planning department about what that might look like and who we could contact. I would love to see something more comprehensive. I know we've talked about that as a commission over the last couple of years. So
yeah, great.
All right, Commissioner Jacoby, I'll call back on you, but I do want to make sure we're not like putting an item, we're not having too much of a discussion about something. If we want to, we certainly can put an item on the agenda for next week and really make it a big topic of discussion and have an open discussion, which would be fair too. But yeah, Commissioner Jacoby, do you have anything you wanted to just add quick to that?
I wanted to just reiterate what I said several meetings ago. Unlike the historic west side, which has a historic district that's fairly large, the historic east side historic district, the National Historic District, is really quite small. It's only about 3 blocks. The neighborhood itself has historically been under development restrictions guidelines when it was RLE1 zoned for many years. And that is a much larger area. And I think that the whole area would benefit from and would accept without too much qualms going back to some kind of development guidelines to protect the whole neighborhood, going from 3rd to 9th and going from Martin to Kimbark. And so I would personally prefer to see that that would all be included in any kind of design guideline recommendations. But again, if we want to talk about this further down the road, but I just thought I'd throw that out.
All right. Thanks, Commissioner. Any others want to have a comment here? See any? My only, just building on the response to Ms. O'Leary's comments, just so that it's kind of clear to the public, typically we have only met when we've had an action item on the agenda, right? So there are times when we don't meet, and it's because we don't have an agenda item to discuss, and so that gets pulled. So it's not necessarily the commission deciding that we just don't feel like meeting to this week and calling it good. I think it's important to understand that. Having said that, we've also had issues because I think we've lost so much, our attorney, city attorney, and we haven't been able to get on top of this code stuff. But I would like to make a real concerted effort, because it's a fair point. I mean, we really have sort of hung on to this for a couple of years. So I would like to say that if for some reason don't have an actionable item even yet next month, let's please meet, right? So that we can discuss, and if we have to put a little pressure on you all to try to get this stuff rolling forward, we'd really like to do that. Yeah, Brian, what do you?
Yeah, and I was just gonna ask the commission, I know, I think maybe last spring I didn't participate in it. But I think Jade worked with the commission to coordinate maybe a retreat and to talk about commission priorities. Maybe if we don't have other items for the commission meeting in March, we could kind of continue that discussion about the topics that the commission started on talking at last year's retreat, and maybe just kind of continue to focus on what those priorities are for the commission. I know kind of a preservation plan, I thought, was one of those topics, along with the code work and some other items. And maybe we just, like I said, if we don't have other action items that are going to take up a lot of time, then maybe we could just kind of continue that conversation. We can bring back some of that information. I think there might be some written up minutes on that. And Glenn, I don't know what you think about that idea as well.
Sure. Yeah, no, I do like the chairman's idea of just keeping our eye on the target. So we hear you. So
Great. And yeah, we didn't actually have a retreat last year because of all this goofiness, and we weren't sure if we were going to be able to meet in person, and we put it off. And then it's hard to have a retreat over Zoom, and it just kind of has been stumbling and bumbling here, in part because of this technological hurdle that we're trying to get to. But I think it's time to just make it a priority and say, if we're stuck doing this for another year, so be it. Let's figure out how to make it work. So I appreciate that. All right, great. Okay, well, if there are no other HPAC commissioners looking to make a comment, we'll go ahead and close that section. Appreciate everyone's input and passion. And we do not have Commissioner Rodriguez with us tonight, I believe, so we will skip the council representative, and that then leads us to adjournment.
I motion we adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn from Commissioner Jacoby and a second by Commissioner Norton. I'm going to say, do we really need a roll call for this? Let's just all in favor, raise your hand and say aye. All right. Thank you very much for all your participation. Thank you, staff, for joining us here and getting through the technical stuff and getting us a meeting. So appreciate it.
Thank